I think I was always destined to do the role that I do. I love, my parents love travelling. Actually, this is a picture I took a few weeks ago. I was up in wonderful island of Skye. Have any of you been there? If you want a romantic weekend, good whiskey. I didn't try much of the whiskey, but I had lots of other great food. I went to stay in the three Chimneys and went walking with my daughter. So luckily we had, I think, about 2 hours of dry weather. This is probably about the only shot that I got when it wasn't raining. But no, it's a beautiful place. But my parents travelled a lot when I was younger, so I think I was sort of destined to have the career that I do, which is working with organisations, which I've done since my early 20s, and helping them through business transformation. On the whole, they're deploying CRM. Some of you might have heard of it, customer relationship management. But for me, I started my career actually in IBM. And at IBM, sort of at those times, the projects that I worked on were a big enterprise, usually with banks. And it took more than a year before they sort of realised the design through to actual implementation, by which time their sort of business moved on. But what I sort of learned on that journey is that actually what they were really doing is that customers were thinking it was an IT project, but over the years with the availability of cloud technology, it's actually sort of really easy for smaller businesses to adopt the enterprise technology. But one of the key success factors is to sort of look at that as a sort of business change. And for me, the organizations that really get that right, I've realized, are the ones that realize that, you know, if you're going through a business transformation, your culture as a business is actually going to be one of those, I would call them like an invisible determination of what your potential success might be in deploying CRM. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So I'm just a show of hands, how many of you have sort of culture and purposes front of mind in your businesses today? That's great to see. Excellent. So what I'd like is for you to feel free to heckle and chip in if there's any of you have any things that you want to contribute as I go along, any real life examples that you think you'd like to share, feel free to add those as well. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud9 Insight. Our business is in the top 20 businesses. In this summer we were voted by Real Business for Culture for SMEs, so they thought I might have some interesting things to say about culture, which is good. I know Jeff's here as well from Gatwick Diamond. If any of you are not a member, join. But we were really proud to have won investing in People for Business Success this year. I think that's a lot to do with the culture that we have in the business and investing in people, as after all, we're a people business. Also voted the top 10 female tech entrepreneurs. So I couldn't really start a presentation about culture without sharing what our purpose is. I spent some time off-site planning for my sort of next year's strategy with my team. The purpose of your business will be one of the key factors that affects why they want to work for your business. And so what you really want to do is, as a team, is to sort of make sure that you're not only have a purpose, but that belongs to everyone as part of the team, and that's understood, and that your customers and prospects out there and partners as well really understand what your purpose is. So the purpose that my team came up with was they wanted to be the future of work. And I really love this idea because for me, when I work with clients, there's sort of the three spaces are sort of like those clients that are sort of in the past in catch-up mode, looking out there thinking, you know what, I really need to sort of invest in my business changing. I'm sort of almost like outgrown the sort of processes and technology and the way we used to do business. And I really need to modernize, and I need to go through a business transformation that's a bit painful. And I think people like me who've traveled a lot as a child probably think, yeah, change, great, let's do it. And then you have other clients who are like, oh, if I have to. And so this is sort of a position where clients are sort of in this catch-up mode here. And then clients who are here are sort of in the present and they're feeling comfortable, yeah, I'm up to date. And then you have some clients who are sort of almost over here really, where they're thinking about being in the future and what does that really mean. And so what myself and the other members of the SMB Growth Hub really want to do is to find opportunities. And I know Kate's in the room as well. She's doing a lot of work here from Sussex University and Nigel as well with the Innovation Centre, doing work with businesses to help them think about the future. And for me, it's not just about technology, it is about sort of modernising your culture as well for your business. I'm hoping to share some of my thoughts on that. I was lucky enough to be invited on the BBC recently as well. So, moving on. So what is culture? So for me, culture is a bit like a cup of coffee. So you have the leaders of the business who are representing those coffee beans. They have an intent for the business. What do they want for the business? What is that sort of culture? And you could say the rest of the water and how it's sort of made up is really the employees and how that translates and how it tastes and the experience that your customers and anyone who deals with your business. If there was just two things that is really important with culture is it's just to make sure your business has a defined and shared and true purpose for your business. And the best way to do that is not about just one person saying this is in marketing, this is what it is, but to work with your team to really understand what is it that brings us all collectively together. And you know what, even if you haven't got that now, but you find that, maybe you might find some people look at that and go, do you know what, I wondered why I didn't fit in here. Maybe it's time to move on. And if you're working for an organization that you don't share their purpose or they don't have a purpose, well, if you can do something about that, do, but if not, maybe it's time to find a company because you spend so much of your life in work. Wouldn't it be better if you felt that the people around you and yourself had that sort of purpose? And also values is very important. I have been part of quite a few acquisitions as an employee over the years. And one of my motivators to set up my own business was the ability to sort of define the values that I wanted. I've worked for actually a lot of American companies where it seems quite normal because obviously they're in America to sort of expect to be able to call you late at night and sort of all hours of the day. And I remember I joined, I was a general manager at Sage before I started this business actually. And I had the joy of sharing this office with this wonderful guy called Bob. And I remember he was American and he hadn't worked in the UK before. And he would start picking up the phone at, I was working in Reading, so I wanted to miss the traffic. So I was still in the office sometimes at 6 or 7. And he wouldn't think anything but to pick up the phone and start calling his team. And I was like, Bob, you can't do that. Because Sage is a British company and you could definitely tell it when it was 5 o'clock because people were leaving the business. So just they sort of think about the culture as well. So why is culture important? For my business, I had that eureka moment. I've definitely thought about culture, but it's never been so important to me as it has been actually in the last year. And for me, there was a time, in fact, it was pretty much this time last year, where unfortunately, as somebody who's quite new in my team, his dad fell ill, and his dad was actually in Spain. He was living in Spain, and he's quite young, this guy. He's in his mid-20s, and we didn't know that actually in the beginning that his dad was poorly, but it didn't take long before he sort of passed away. And then there was somebody else in the team who was a similar age, and with this happening, he was massively affected because he realized he only had his mum in his life, and he became quite upset. And in fact, he didn't share with us what was happening in his life, but he became really grumpy and even started almost shouting at his boss, not quite, but just being really snappy. And we sort of took him aside and we said hey, hi, his name was is everything all right? You're not yourself. And he said, you know what, this really affected me. This other guy's dad and not being well. And it was at that moment, and so we were able to help him. Luckily we sign up to, if you ever use it. If you don't use it, I recommend it's Peninsula HR, and we phoned them up and we were asking them for advice. What can we do? What can we do to help this guy? He was born in China and he moved here when he was 13. He had no family or friends, and it was just his mum who wasn't particularly well, wasn't really poorly, but he was concerned. And they gave us loads of advice and help to sort of put him in touch with Chinese networking groups, and we helped him to find a sort of way of dealing with the situation. Fortunately for us, actually, he ended up moving with a close friend. Had a happy end because he moved to Coventry to be with close family friends in the past. But what it made me realize is that no matter what you do as a leader or as a team in your business, there's a phenomenal amount of things that are going on in people's personal lives. And I think whatever you can do as a business to support and recognize, even if you don't always understand, to try and be as empathetic as you can to support those people around. So from that moment on, especially with this Chinese guy, and we were his family. in the business, in terms of that he didn't have anyone else. It was just him and his mum in the UK. And so from that point on, I decided that I really wanted to create a culture of what I called culture family. And I laugh with people, you can't always choose your family, but at least support each other and listen out for each other. So that's what started me on the journey of culture. Apparently 67% of employees are not engaged. And for me, the concept of presenteeism is also quite prevalent, where people are it's almost worse than sort of being sick. So they're turning up and not actually being productive. And I think that affects probably a lot of industry. So if 67% of your employees are not engaged, and maybe when they're less than 50% of that time, they're actually fully productive. It's like, wow, you're paying for only a small amount of their time. So I'm fascinated by what is it I can do to make sure that the people who are coming to work in my business are fully engaged. And I think one of the key answers for that is having a great culture where you want people to get out of bed in the morning and leap out and think, yeah, I've got this purpose and this is what I can do. If you're a growing company, then I think you need to make sure that you pay a lot of attention to the culture of business, because it can also help you keep your employees as well as attract new employees, and I think that's really important. The other sort of on the employee side of the bottom, 20% of employees are what they call discontent. So they're the ones who are actually going around going, oh, you should go and get a better pay rise here, or they're just sort of troublemakers, toxic. So I do encourage people to sort of look at that. I know I used to work closely with Siebel years ago. They very proactively look to churn the bottom 5% of their employees. For me, I think the best thing to do is to just, when you're assessing your employees across your business, is to think about, most importantly, is what are your values? Make sure that they're really clear and they're accurate. When I worked at Sage, one of the things that really annoyed me was every day I walked into this huge atrium, and one of the values that was hanging down was the word innovation. And I was like, my goodness, all we talked about was cash cows in our strategy meetings, and they didn't do cloud, and I was like, this doesn't feel like an innovative company. So make sure whatever you do that your values absolutely resonate with what you do, because it might otherwise annoy people when they come in. But definitely put them up on the walls and remind people, but importantly, hire people against your values. So make sure your job adverts absolutely exude what your values are. Do review your values regularly. And also, when you're looking at people's performance, what's really important is just to sort of check in with the teams, is which of those people do you feel aren't a good fit for those values, because maybe they might be people who you need to move on. They're not right for your business. They might be those discontent people. And so I think the other thing that's quite common is that high growth companies have a purpose. I met a professor from New York University, and she's just in the process of setting up a new degree courses. And I said, who's your customers? And what was really interesting is actually she said her customers were going to be investment sort of VC companies. And she said that they have recognized that companies that invest in culture, have a good culture and have a good ethics, are the ones that do the best. So that she's offering this course in New York for VCs, which I thought was really interesting. I thought she was offering it for entrepreneurs and business owners. So there we go. And I think the other important thing there is if 80% of the loyalty of your employees is actually toward their attitude of how they perform in their role, is how they feel about their boss, I would say it's absolutely critical that your line managers or leaders in your business are aligned 100% with your culture. Otherwise, it doesn't take long. The culture starts to change, because you can certainly, as a leader of a business, stand here and think, what do I want the culture to be? But it doesn't take much for that to change. Some of you might recognize this if you've studied culture before, but Harvard Business Review have a sort of framework for looking at culture. And what they would propose is that if you've got two of these values that are close together, it means they're probably quite a good fit. But they would suggest that you don't have an organization that's high on learning but high on safety, because maybe you know what, that might not work. Or you might not want, say, a call center, results-driven call center, Are they going to really have time to be caring? Possibly not. There might be sort of a conflict. So really think of what they would say is that all of these are valid values, but ones that are closer together might be a better fit together. So also just think about the consistency of the messaging of your values as well. So just make sure that whatever your purpose is, that it's inspiring it's not just for employees, it's really important for your clients as well to see that. For example, I went to Waitrose recently and I was at the till, and this lady came up to me at the till and she said, "You've spent a lot of money on shopping this week." I was mortified because everyone was looking at me thinking, how much is a lot? And am I going to get some chocolates? They were probably all thinking. So I said to her, well, what does a lot mean? And she said, how do you decide who to give the chocolates to? Because I noticed she only had one box. In fact, all the tills just had one box on their by their tills. And she said, you know what, we are empowered to make that decision as to sort of who we give those customers to. So it could have been that they just spent £10, but we were given that discretion. And the joy on her face of being able to sort of give a gift, you could say, of these chocolates. I'm the best person. I'm easily bribed because I'm an absolute chocoholic, by the way. So it's really nice that I think that for me, I absolutely adore going shopping if I can in Waitrose, not because they have great food, because the employees there, you really get a sense that they love what they do, they love being there, and they really, I feel they always go above and beyond. And when I'm there, they're always chatting to my kids and frankly take a lot of stress out of shopping. So it's really nice. I think it's important that your purpose is something that your customers can connect with. So I would say that it's really critical to make sure that your values are really clear in your job adverts. And hopefully, maybe if you in the past had, I don't know, say 30 applicants for one position, then maybe the fact that you've got your values there will mean that people won't apply because they don't resonate. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? So you only want people applying, and because it's amazing how often we do get people saying, do you know what, I applied because I really resonated with those values that you have. Two of our values, my two favourite values for us is fun and positivity. They seem to go down quite well. So, but one of our new, in fact, it's a Microsoft value as well, is my new favourite value is growth mindset. And for me, I love this because for me, it's almost about taking people outside their comfort zone and giving them permission to fail and learn at the same time. So if you're a growing business and you need to push boundaries of what you're expecting from people, then that might be one worth thinking about if it resonates with you. But I also think it's important to, as I mentioned earlier, to sort of think about who fits in with your values and not, and you might want to churn those who don't, because I think they could be quite damaging for your business. I would say, quite controversially perhaps, I think a few of my clients might even be in the room, is to put employee engagement above client satisfaction. Because I think that definitely you should try and make customers happy, but I think if you've got clients who don't meet your values, then you shouldn't have those clients, I would say. And I'd be quite happy to contribute my clients to the competition if they weren't a good cultural fit, if they were unethical in their work practices, or frankly shouted abuse at any of my team. And I'd like to think that other employees are too. But I think that if you can really make employee engagement a key part of what you do in your business in terms of looking after your employees, and I think that they will look after your customers in turn. Of course, you need to make sure that they know that the customers are number one, but as a leader of the business, you should make your employees number one, and then your customers will definitely, as long as you have a value of being customer centric, then your employees will definitely look after your customers, and I found that certainly to be true in our business. So I would also encourage all of you to, when you're recruiting the people entering the workplace today, first of all, one of the more above money, they want to work for an organisation that puts purpose sort of front of mind, and they really need to sort of really connect with that, because that's where you'll get that discretionary effort. And one of the other things that the younger workplace are looking for now, in fact, I would say all generations, but particularly the younger ones, is the ability to have flexible working. So that might be unlimited, could be unpaid leave. Some organisations even offer a paid leave, but I think within reason. Maybe flexible working practices. So it could be that working longer hours in a 4-day week is becoming more common, actually. So I think if you're able to do that, then potentially you might have even it's sort of driving up your employee engagement. So really think about it's not. I'm sure it's not applicable. No, you can't have it. I'll think about it. But it's worth thinking about. I know it's not going to be right for every role, but if it's possible for your business, maybe experiment and see. Like, there's a lot of noise. Maybe it's good noise, and I'm open-minded to trying that. I'm experimenting with that right now in our business. I'm mildly dyslexic, and it's something I feel a bit of an ambassador for. So if I forget your name or don't know who you are, apologies. I definitely have a name and face sort of amnesia. Even in my team, they'll tell you when I pause to say their name, they're like, "Yes, I'm Jake." And I've only been here a while, but they forgive me, so they laugh about it. But I think that valuing diversity is a really good thing. With the advent of technology as well, I think particularly dyslexics, they have phenomenal creative and problem-solving skills. So definitely have some of those in your team. People would say that in the tech sector, particularly people with autism are phenomenal employees because of their dedication, loyalty, and ability to focus. I wish I had some of that. And so diversity for me isn't just about neurodiversity. It could be, I was part of inviting everyone. I'm still lack of females in the room, but we tried our best. But in the tech sector, I'm used to being about the only female around. So it could be gender. I'm intrigued, is the legal sector, is that quite balanced these days? Yeah, ish, sometimes. So maybe it's about also making opportunities for that flexible working might help. Actually, but one of the things I'm most passionate about, apart from culture, is actually apprentices as well. I actually have just at the sort of early stage of setting up an apprenticeship business, a government-approved apprenticeship business to get more talent into the tech sector. And so for me, actually, diversity is also about age. Because certainly when I go to Microsoft conferences, everyone's sort of a sea of bald or grey hair, and I'm like, wow, where's the next generation of people coming from? So I think it's a fantastic thing to have younger people, especially apprentices, coming in. And I think people are recognising, I've had quite a few calls over the summer from parents whose kids have graduated and they're a bit depressed, going, oh, I've just got to go and I want my child to leave the nest. They don't tell me that, but they're just like, their kids have realised they've got 50 grand or more in debt, and the degree hasn't really helped them get a job. And so maybe apprenticeships may be right, especially in the tech sector. It's a great thing because you certainly don't need a degree in tech because the pace of change is so fast. By the time you finish your degree, there's new technology. But so think about that as well. I would also say in your business, in terms of employee engagement and the culture of business, is if you want to keep people, is make it really clear what is the progression in your business when you're investing in people. So make that clear. And job security is really important for your employees. So especially with the younger generation, you need to give them a lot of feedback, good and bad, but especially younger ones. So that's quite important. I would also say adapt a coaching, not directive style of management. Potentially give your leaders in the business coaching, training to be great coaches, because that will help you have a more empowered workforce as well, and encourage them to be accountable for the work they do. Communication is critical. Everyone wants to have a voice, everyone wants to be heard, and do everything you can. I know that sometimes my team used to think that I was always planning to sack someone. Maybe I was, but I used to have an office in the corner, and then I thought, well, okay, I'll invite some of the other leaders into my huge office that I had in the corner. And that was even worse, because they definitely thought that we were sort of planning and scheming. So not long ago, I actually changed, and we're now sort of completely open plan. So I no longer have an office, which I actually really like. So I think it's great because I get to I've also put in place a hot desking scheme because I found as my team was growing, there was more silos building up in the business, which I hated. So now I encourage everyone to hot desk and to sort of move around and sit next to different people. It's amazing what you learn when you can do that. And it's worked out really well. Okay, it's quite expensive. Everyone has to have consistent devices. But we've gone through that change. But I would say it's been a fantastic thing for a business, and I think people feel less intimidated by me and know I'm a real person and can talk to me, and I get to hear about what's happening in the business. So I've really enjoyed that. And I would just say that also ensure that there's a real clarity between your strategy and your goals for the people in your business. And for me, that's about making sure that they really understand what is their little cog in the bigger picture. How do they contribute? And it's really motivating for them to feel how they contribute, and that could be making sure you have team meetings. I particularly found this when I started hiring apprentices, because they came into the business, or maybe it might be the same with graduates, but they came into the business feeling really intimidated by all these experienced people. But if you could make them feel really valued and that their input was really connecting with the output and the success of the business, that was a great thing. So that was all I had to say. Thank you.